Kinesiology, 223. This is chapter 19. This chapter's it speaks primarily to exercise behavior, and the majority of the chapter speaks to exercise behavior from the context of fitness, not so much athletics. So, I'll do my best to try to stay within the bounds of being fitness related, which I can speak to, but I'll also try to provide some examples that might be inclusive of a coaching environment and getting your athletes to understand why it's so critical to be plugged in, not just during the season, but during the off season, which is quite frankly where you're going to make your most gains, because you don't make a lot of your gains per se during the in-season mode. All right, let's move on. So with exercise behavior and adherence, these are the main things we're looking for. Why people do or do not exercise, different models of exercise behavior, determinants of exercise adherence, and identify strategies for increasing adherence, and also give guidelines for improving this. All right. So, so many people, especially during like January, they go ahead and say, darn it, dang it, whatever you want to say. Today's the day, enough is enough. I'm going to the gym, I'm going to work out. And there's three main data points that they note here in terms of activity, because the people come in with the best of intentions, but over time there's this kind of erosion, if you will, or erosion in adherence. And I'll just point out that there are 3 points. There's actually 4 that if you break one of them out, it is a subcategory. But they note that women are less active than men. They note that activity decreases with age, and activity decreases with lower socioeconomic status, and those with chronic diseases are less likely to be active. And I agree with all of these. And in some regard, as a practitioner, you have to be very adept at understanding with these, what the difference is, or what the deal is with these differences. As somebody gets older, of course, they're going to have different aches and pains. Well, the different aches and pains lends itself right into chronic disease. And they might have this kind of give up mentality when in fact they should have the exact opposite, because there's only one thing that is universally known as medication that helps everything, and it's exercise. So with weight control, weight control is a pretty sizable topic, if I can just use a pun there. Obesity, quite frankly, is an epidemic. It's an epidemic across the planet, and it's also an epidemic in the United States. And with that, and these are all, if you want to use control click, you can click out to these web pages that'll have these articles or information so that you have more up-to-date information. Worldwide, you have 2.5 billion adults are obese. 40% of adults and 20% of children in the United States are obese, and obesity is associated with a wide range of chronic diseases. And I said it before, it's one of those things where if you want to have an intervention with a chronic disease, probably exercise or movement is the place to start. Cardiovascular disease has, when we evaluate people when they come in and do a health issue questionnaire, we have kind of an 8-in-1 approach. You have 8 things that have positive correlations and 1 that's a negative correlation. And long story short, when you look at these, exercise is one of the big most correlated things to reducing any one of these issues. Now, one of them is actually the benefit of exercise is one of them. So if you're physically active, that's correlated to a lower risk of cardiovascular disease. So you have that as a backdrop here. So that's one of your 8. But the 8-in-1 format really helps us to determine the positive and negative risk factors that you'll see when a person comes in to do a consultation. But again, I can't stress this enough. When you look at like CVD, coronary vascular disease, or even coronary heart disease, CHD, the contributing factors, whether it's hypertension, blood lipids, or maybe it's blood glucose levels, I'll just name 3 off real quick, they all benefit from exercise. So when you work with people, sometimes you have to work with them to get them to understand and buy into this process. And age you can't control. A person is either over 45 or 55 or not. They have a family history. You can't control that. But here's where you can start controlling stuff. Cigarette smoking, physical inactivity, BMI as a result of physical activity and good diet. Um, when you have the waist circumference, it's the same thing in terms of diet, nutrition, and working out. Blood pressure, to some degree, we're kind of bound by our own genetic predisposition to having higher blood pressure or not. But again, working out helps with both systolic and diastolic. And then blood lipid levels, same thing. We can do things in terms of intervention wise regarding our diets and workouts to be able to reduce our LDL or low density lipoprotein and do things to help increase our high density lipoprotein. One is bad, one is good, in order respectively there. And then also blood glucose levels. If you're type 2 diabetic or even borderline type 2 diabetic or type 2 hypertensive, working out will help that process. You might need a medical intervention to start, but working out in conjunction with a medical intervention is absolutely a benefit. And then the one that is a negative risk factor, meaning as this goes up, your likelihood of cardiovascular disease goes down, is high density lipoprotein. Got it? Let's go ahead and jump back out of this and back into our presentation. All right, so working out also has its place, and exercise has its place in terms of reducing stress and depression and increased enjoyment. I will say that these mechanisms are complex, right? And I'll let you kind of read through here while I talk. You can make the argument of this, right, that obesity is a progressive condition, and it doesn't just happen where a person shows up and they're obese and they're maybe 100 pounds overweight. So it's something where when a person starts to work out, enjoyment ain't part of the process. It's an intervention, and they're there because they know they have a health issue. They know that perhaps they had a medical report. They know they're overweight. And so I would state that when you have people who are clinically obese and they have a very high BMI, it's more about establishing the routine, establishing the pattern of getting to the gym, finding results on the scale at this point, losing weight and starting to feel better. And that's where the enjoyment will come from, not day one. It'll come from losing X amount of pounds each week as that person goes through the process of losing weight. And also as you win them over and get them more acclimated and comfortable with the gym environment. That won't happen day one. Just don't go into this thinking that's going to be the case. Most people who come in that condition are scared, and they're there for a reason, because they know they have to have and make a change, and you got to own that and you got to honor that. So I would say also with reductions in stress and depression, when you look at what we do in terms of the fitness world or the coaching world, like in strength and conditioning, we're applying a stressor on the human organism to get a training response. And to that end, you have somebody who's in a high stress environment at their work, and here you are dumping another stressor on their body. That system might get a little bit overload. So I would just urge you to be aware of that and be very cognizant of the levels of stress that maybe your client or your student athletes might have. And here's a wonderful example, like me as a coach, when I was doing strength and conditioning at the college level, I would never, ever have my athletes do a test out during finals week. My athletes are already stressed out enough as it is. They're already stressed out for their finals. There's no sense of putting another stressor on them, and then they underperform with me and they underperform in the classroom. So I would normally have the test out week before finals, and then I would allow them to come in and work out in the gym. No expectation. They could come in at their leisure. They can get a little workout. They had no expectation regarding what they should do or what we wanted them to do. I wanted them to come in and use the gym as a stress reliever, not an additional stress on the system during finals week. Just food for thought if you move forward and get into the strength and conditioning side of the house. Enhancement of self-esteem. It gives you, opportunities to socialize as well. So when you get into the gym and you have people who come in and they've never been in a gym environment, when they walk in, the potential for these definitely exists, no doubt about it. But there's going to be barriers in place, because when a person walks into the gym and they're deconditioned, the first thing they look at is all the equipment, everybody working out, and oh my God, everybody knows what they're doing and they're all so fit. You know what? Every one of them started out just like the person you're going to meet with at the table. And so as a result, sometimes you have to kind of like indoctrinate your people slowly. You kind of have to help them through a learning curve to understand that here are pieces of equipment. Not everybody knew what they were doing when they got here. Not everybody is as fit as you think, and we're all in this process together. And, you have to get people to become more comfortable with that external environment, as we talked about in a previous chapter. And it's a matter of really kind of getting people to understand that, as a trainer, both the psychological, they call it, the psychological and the physiological sides of exercise can be put at the forefront to help people really understand the benefits, but there's a psychosocial component as well, where you have groups of people who are all trying to do the same thing within the gym itself. And when you first meet with people, you have to make them understand or help them understand that, not everybody is super fit in the gym. God knows there are some people like that. But they know they want to make a change, right? And so what you have to do as a trainer is you have to work with them through the process of a psychological side and the physiological side to help them visually understand what that change is. They don't know what it is. It'll be very rare that you have somebody come in, or they'll tell you that when they do come in that they want to lose X amount of weight. It's when you ask them when was the last time you weighed that, they'll tell you they were like a junior in high school. It's like unrealistic. But usually it's like, I want to be fit or I want to be in shape. And you have to be able to walk them down a path to get them to understand where that's coming from, because there's an emotional driver that really is pushing that button in that person. And so it's the job of the trainer, and it's different in a college athletic environment because those folks know what they want to do. They want to be great at their sport and great in their position. They want to start and keep their scholarship. But when you have somebody walk in off the street in a fitness facility, and they meet with you as a trainer, it's your job to help provide focus to what will be a very nebulous concept with that client. They won't have a solid idea of what that picture is. That's your job to help them figure that out. I'm going to jump out to the next one. Guys, have a good one.